Yeah.
It's a one.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Can
we see it?
Yeah.
You know, my first thought.
Identify conditions usual in the case of well, that would be an extra recognized.
The exercise is doing what?
So identify conditions.
I want you to
Determine
how to present it. Right. Presentation methods. Yep. Presentation methods.
It's like, yeah.
So,
What's there?
this case.
Actually, go back.
Intake interview form.
well, that's why I have to look at the forms, because I have my separate taxes every year, and then
But now it's
And then we get
The only way you're
two different kinds, at least, well, there's
Page two.
Page number Social Security.
well, because it takes you to separation.
Yeah.
Page two.
The column.
those are in the
Roll
top of
over.
the page. What's the end for that?
We're trying to identify how to teach.
So there's
That's right.
So educated expenses. So we get to see those.
And see if they mark.
So the objective
Then after you're gonna order.
So if we're identifying conditions that may indicate no employment in, then it's,
yes, we should.
teaching proper intake, interview,
Go away.
questions.
No, these are new.
And
I thought we started
downstairs fine.
identify
December 18, yeah.
when additional questions might be needed.
2008.
Yes.
Yeah, well, yeah. Once you have determined yes,
Teach
retire, identify what. But now what do I do with it? Well, then I go and
So for this one,
turn
we
on
can
computer and text layer.
So now look at that.
Recognize where the
They're
index,
normal. Yeah.
submenu.
Well, you have to identify.
well, lecture part would come in probably the next one. Recognize tax forms and bills that represent self-employment. So that's when you would need, that's when you had one PowerPoint up there with a picture of a 1099 miscellaneous form, and which boxes on there actually indicate self-employment.
So you're saying for this one, in order to do that first one, you say, okay, we're gonna start working on self-employment. So we're
Yeah.
gonna have one, two volunteers to come up with.
Yeah, I haven't done my cut and paste yet.
So we'll step
So
one
you
on
would
presentation.
hopefully have somebody that would sit with you to demonstrate.
Do you want to start out?
But that's not one of our objectives.
We're already with the next.
We're only evaluating objectives, we're just writing a class so it's just this objective. So if they've already identified. There's other issues that they've already identified. But they're all
Yeah, they've already done the cut and paste.
Well, the best way to do that is. Sharing it with the objectives, so now it's, and the list of procedures to meet our objectives.
I also
So we're creating
But I don't
I think we're just trying to figure out how to teach. So the role play, the role lecture.
Yeah.
You know, are we using the role play to teach?
I guess what we could do is wander over.
Okay, I'll watch. How would you present it? What techniques would you use to present it?
I was thinking.
So that would allow you to,
Not one to know.
when you do your assessments, it would allow you
Display.
to
what if we're missing?
I like
the
handouts, but you've got to
objectives?
minimize them, so
Which is
display examples.
identifying
Display
what
examples. Display examples.
There was a, no, that's what this says, identify the conditions that may indicate
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
That's right, look at the intake sheet, what are the things, even if they mark no on it, what are the things might indicate that they have to I missed?
And they may have.
Well, that's recognizing
Yeah.
taxable.
Yeah.
So the conditions, they have no have another job, they don't have it, right, they have no W-2. So now we may say, oh, that's a condition.
And say at that point, when you see this federal one,
How do
it's
you
like,
earn your
I
income?
guess one of the
remember
things.
that at some point you're going to.
Right, but the best way to teach it is through a role. Because your new
I think that's one approach.
Because I don't think your new volunteers are gonna know how to ask
Then
the
have the
questions about
the
something.
federal side.
So if they have someone who's
What is that?
more experienced and, you know, oh,
So you have to talk about it. Where is the old form used to be great. Right now, you want to get to the bottom line. You want to get.
See, and I didn't,
How do we
took,
go back to the well, you add some
Translator, and that's now where
basic.
see, I guess I wouldn't polish as identifying conditions that may indicate, I would word it more simply, identify types of
Yeah,
things that
well,
are.
eventually, yeah.
Because shut itself.
Okay. It's a set of objectives. You somehow have to figure out how to teach people to identify.
So where do you find, where do you find?
How do you intake sheet go? Where on the intake sheet do you find self-employed?
Let's look at your, oh, you got it,
Well, they can actually have.
Maybe I'm not saying, maybe I'm not explaining. I see conditions as, yes, we want to look at the intake sheet, but before we even look at that, students need to understand is, is my dividend income something that is the $500 that I got for making this.
Same thing. You're both saying the same thing.
But that's the thing, is people have to know
What self-employed. So I think what you're saying is before you get to the, looking at the intake sheet, there should be a definition of self-employed.
cash payments are something that you did is,
We're just talking
cash
about.
payments for selling your
I just wanna make sure
clothes
the scope is
is
there.
not.
Yeah.
So I feel that.
and I get that.
Teaching.
Talking about the acceptance.
Well, they need to know what to do.
No, I said for this particular, for that objective, for this objective, we could use a role
But
play
that's
to
one thing you
identify.
have to know.
Not that it's the first thing in the class, these are the objectives that we have, so it's how to teach this particular objective.
So that's one way, and a role play is certainly one way. Another might be a discussion. Hand out a bunch of forms that may or may not be self-employed.
What do you say?
Wonderful, is it not? How would you know? What questions?
You've got a good degree discussion, so I would just go like, I would have here identifying what is some income, and then we could look at, how do we even find out where do they get that from?
That's what you want, yeah, jumping in the middle, you know, of my class, are useful to do somebody else's objectives, right?
Right, and just because the objectives are written in this order doesn't mean that's the teacher is the teacher.
Display an example on the screen.
What, yeah, the problem, yeah,
One,
ADD, yeah,
yes.
ADD, there, that was, this was, you know, yeah.
Then how do you get them to stop? Look at the
So identify what is
to help
considered.
you identify.
Self-employment, that may be the
You're
first
missing
thing.
an
You're
missing And for that, that might be.
Start to do
Every time you get
And
something.
for the identifying the self, that could be a like, to have them actually pull up, you know, and look up different things, or you give them scenarios and have them look up and they've got scenarios.
We're developing
Because recently my shows that I grew up
Yeah, all of this stays with you.
basically.
capital gains and doors.
And if I had clothes that actually appreciated in value, that would be a lot.
Agree.
Recognize the tax forms and that you might have to do by measure.
Okay, figured out what we're doing?
Or
Have we
actually.
figured out what we're doing?
Well, yeah, that's what I mean.
So that white envelope.
Are we doing it?
That's the listening.
Right, that's more, that's more.
Never used that one.
That's how they learn where to do it.
What do you see that causes you bother?
Well, they might get it all agree for nothing.
I was both sitting and trying to think of
Right, so how do we
Sometimes
teach
they
our
are
county
their documents to write down.
how to
get the matches in the golf.
So the tax collector, I know that they make the forms, adjustment for self-assessment. They get another they've got it, how do we teach our counselors to write it?
Okay, I'm gonna give you 30 seconds. No, because I have Lois. Lois gets to talk about case-based training. I want to make sure she has time to do that. Oh, we're gonna talk about that tomorrow morning. Yeah. Mostly because I haven't figured out what I'm gonna say about it.
So, question I had earlier.
You could also do like a,
TaxAide has a mission statement
like
for the IRS as we go green.
Yeah.
like a question and answer.
That is objective for our training modules and our methods. So is there a 5-year roadmap that says 5 years from now, this is our tools, how are we going to do things?
Not that I'm aware of, but I do know that NTTC feels pretty confident in the workbook. Without really hard copy, but I think you'll see the 4012 things that are printed by the IRS. Those things are going to be electronic. So your 4012, 4491, the 4491. This is the evergreen copy. Oregon Pub 17, they're not going to publish that. They're not going to. Once they go, they're gone. They're not going to publish it.
And your regular
Still want to read
things,
things.
so that could be.
Not on a screen.
That was the reason for my question, because we got to prep the stage. We might as well turn them away the first week.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a fact of life. That's kind of the way I look at it.
It is. I think teaching them how to search in a PDF, teaching them how to navigate in a PDF, those are the things that are going to help release that, but there's going to be no,
But if you have
exactly right, that all of our agencies are going electronic.
Technology
They just
does that.
are.
Like,
Demonstrate the type of question.
Here's one of the advantages, that all the hyperlinks will work. So if you get to the index and you want to not read the click on it, you can click on it and go straight to the section you want to go to. So it's not like it used to be where we had to so the hyperlinks work, right? Yep, that still search still works, but the hyperlinks at least work. And because the IRS was always pretty good about that.
So my question is, as we develop your training plan for new trainer, you got to have a roadmap because we've got to move parts. We no longer have a framework.
We don't have.
We know what it's year by year.
Yeah, we don't know.
But
Okay. Time up.
Wagging the dog too.
Time's up. So how'd we do? We had some nice discussion back here, right? Discovered a missing objective. That's awesome.
Oh, no, you're not asking.
That's good, because you will run into that, right? You'll discover that, okay, I need them to do this, this, and this, and then you'll start to look at that and you go, holy moly, I got to do this before I can do that. Got to put that objective in, right? So give me one of your presentation methods.
One of our presentation methods would to be put a very minimal slide up just to have some bullet points, qualifying dependents, but take the people through the actual tool of the
trifold.
Mm-hmm.
Wander through the trifold. Yeah. Or the 4012 has a nice flow chart thing as well. Yep. Excellent. So that was qualifying dependents. You guys had retirement income. So give me one of your presentation methods.
Well, one of the objectives was to identify conditions that may indicate retirement.
Okay.
Each one of our trainees has this.
The intake sheet,
So
for those of
we
you who
want them
can't
to
see.
look at where they might find
So check marks that might indicate we have a retired person.
Yes.
Okay? Good. How else might we identify conditions for retirement?
Based on the type of forms that they're.
The type of forms they may have, their age, the fact that there's no W-2s, right? Combined with the age, that may lead us to start asking questions about retirement income.
How about
Excellent.
looking at the last year's taxes, hopefully they brought in.
We could look at last year's tax return. That gives us all sorts of valuable information, doesn't it? Or we could ask them. Say, there you go. Concept. Talk to the taxpayer. Holy moly. All right, in the back. One presentation method.
We had other taxes.
Uh-huh.
And our first step was going to be to go to the 4012, page H1, and show people, have them go through the list of what are other taxes, and then what is out of scope. Because most of them are
Out of scope. There you go.
And then we
So,
focus on what
4012, rename in your brain. Oops. Right?
resources.
Search and replace. Volunteer resource guide.
Yes.
Volunteer resource guide.
Is that what it's called?
Yes. There we go. There we go.
It used to be the flippy book.
The flippy book. That's right. Hey, go to the flippy book. That's right. All right. And this table.
So we had self-employment income, and the part that actually created the fuss to begin with was the missing objective is identifying what is self-employment income. Is the $500 they got for mowing someone's yard for the year self-employment versus the $500 they got for selling their clothes that they grew out of. And so you have to be able to identify what is self-employment income before you know where to start looking for it.
There we go. Excellent. Right?
And we figured we'd do that as more of a discovery. So we'd give them a list of conditions or a list of types of income that they might see. So, oil certificates or money from selling clothes, money from mowing the lawn, stuff like that. And then we'd have them go and look in whatever resource they're comfortable with. Some people might like the resource guide, some people might like the 4491, some people might just want to go to IRS and type in self-employment and have them tell us whether it's
Self-employment or not. Okay. Excellent. So, notice that not one of you, other than your bullet points, used a PowerPoint presentation, which makes my heart very happy. Because I like when we start thinking outside of pull up the NTTC slides and just start going click, 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 right? Excellent. Lois, I'm sorry for stolen.
You can ask this.
Oh, I didn't know, yeah, I wasn't aware that you guys were working on it. So what, I didn't give them a topic.
You did.
Oh, did I? Okay, let's hear your, I'm sorry.
You can guess what our topic is.
This is interactive.
Taxes. Self-employment. No, you had self-employment. Retirement. Common adjustments. Do you guys have common adjustments? Really? Common adjustments.
Oh, yeah, common adjustments. We actually were referring to the intake. This is the freaking Bible. The
Well, I
first
don't
year, I'll be
know about
honest,
that.
well, for me it is. I mean, the very first year I looked at it and I just really didn't understand how to navigate through it. And every other year it's like, oh my God, this is so important. We also had discussions about, unfortunately in Bend, because we don't certify our greeters don't get a chance to go through the intake to make sure all the questions are being answered.
The greeters are supposed to take the intake
They're
interview
supposed
quality
to,
review.
because we actually, several of our greeters freaked out a couple of years ago and they received all the pamphlets and all the booklets that they were supposed to study to take the basic, just the exam.
The volunteer, yes, and
We had a rebellion, so we decided to just go ahead. So it's added an element of time consumption for us as counselors, because we have to ourselves go through this, make sure that we're certified, HSA, what have you, and make sure all the questions are answered. But the bottom line is, for looking at the adjustments, this is the thing that's going to basically tap our information and cue us as to what we're supposed to be putting into. One last little thing I want to put in is I didn't really realize until midway through my first year, adjustments are subtractions. I mean, adjustments is a nice way, but you can have a plus on an adjustment, except, I mean, an adjustment in another world, but adjustment with taxes is subtractions. So if I were to teach this, that would be the first thing I'd want to say is just keep in mind, you have, normally on the 1040s, you have income, and then you have subtractions that are also called adjustments.
Okay, so how would you present this?
How would I present this in front of the class? Just that. I would basically, going through the 1040,
so you're going to put the 1040 up on the screen?
And the Schedule 1 showing income, the wages, and then below that is adjustments. And I would just let the students know that what adjustments really are subtractions. They're subtractions from what the income is. You have all your additions.
So you're going to talk to them. Your presentation method is electric.
Well,
okay.
Talk to and also ask other questions.
Okay.
About,
Oh, no, it's not, that wasn't a negative lecture. That was okay.
Oh,
I'm just trying to make sure that I put a word to it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. My only recommendation would be to have a handout with that Schedule 1.
Yeah.
Or,
yes,
Schedule 1, yep.
So we had to have.
Yeah, and that's what we agreed.
Yeah.
We had that's in the Schedule 1.
That in the Schedule 1, yeah.
Last year, 1040, you had that one.
Yeah, nice, lovely one page, yes, and now we've got Frankenform. Yeah. Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. Now I can turn it over. Wait, yes?
Slow down.
Give me one.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so thank you very much. So when this afternoon then, I will have you form your teams and pick your modules. You're welcome to choose one of these, but talk to me so we don't get people doing the same module, because I want to see different modules. And you can start working on your objectives and your presentation methods and your resources and tools and all that stuff. That's what the afternoon is for, at least like from 3 o'clock on. So Lois is here to do something else.
Case-based training.
Case-based training,
So,
which may change what you decide to do this afternoon.
So I'm going to take a page from Ruth's book, playbook here, and suggest if you want, take a couple minutes, stand up, stretch, let me pull up my slides and the other documents, and we'll start in like 2 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit.
You look at.
Now official website.
You look at.
They're getting tomorrow morning.
Well, if you microwave and zap it for a couple seconds.
Starting in, we don't start till January. So I just got my rule book.
Just go what?
Got my rule book. So,
Put it in the
the text is online and so can go too. You know what police and you have this one question, it's a multiple choice, it's got 4 bullets, and it says, put these in order of which you would apply. It's like, OUS will throw the flag, so you link it across, so you got A, B, C, and D. So if you take D and you slide it over to the first position.
It is that the same one that we got
So you can't look at, take a snapshot and say you got B, C, A, D, because when you rearrange them all. it-
Okay, are we ready to get started? Okay.
Yeah. That one too is a big time.
Oh, good. I need this as a prompt.
It's a prompt, yep.
As a
I'm gonna
prompt.
move your water a little
Prompt.
bit out of the screen there.
Okay, good.
I'll take my phone.
Okay, case-based training. Little I know until Ruth mentioned it earlier today is that I guess there was some case-based training materials out there last year. Well, last year was my first year involved in training in our district, and there were a couple of reasons why I got involved. One is that there was some transition going on, and I thought that there could be some significant improvements as to the way the training could be done. And so I foolishly raised my hand and said, I'll help. So, but what we were doing is that typical training, which is by topic. And I'm sure you're all familiar with that. You start with, W-2s and income, and you teach it, and you've got the PowerPoints and that sort of thing. So this case-based stuff came around back in August and caught my attention. And I thought it was a great idea, great methodology. So we're going to talk about that today, and the transition and the work that I've been doing. Where's that little guy?
Did I want to go out with it? I did. Sorry.
That works. So we're going to basically kind of talk about what it is, why we should do it, how to get started, because it's not that easy to get started, and I'll just describe my transition in our districts, and then we're going to work a little bit in small groups about how your areas can do transition too. Okay, so typically case-based training. In this case, the NTTC has put out a package in the portal, and in that package you're going to find 4 PowerPoints. One for typical taxpayer scenarios. Your single person, your single parent, your young married couple, and your senior married couple. That's the basics, okay? You're also going to see an instructor guide in there. That's where you're going to find the README file also, which gives a lot of explanation as to their thinking about how you're going to use all these materials. It's designed for new volunteers, but I can see it being adapted for returning also, especially if you've got, your second and your third year. We invite second year counselors to our new returning, so they can come to the full 5 days. What we found is that if you're a third or more year counselor, it becomes too disruptive. They know so much more that it becomes disruptive to the class. So now we've shifted that into returning counselor training. And so we're able to separate them out. But I think this can be adapted for the returning. But our returning people don't want to sit down for more than 1 day. If training is more than 1 day, they're not coming. Okay, that's just the way they are. Okay. So, where are we? That is not the slide. Oh, I love this. Okay. When you get the slides from NTC, some of them have animation and some of them don't. And animation can be really wonderful, but I forgot I put animation on here, so it's like I didn't go overboard with the animation. I only used it when I thought it was appropriate. Okay, so in addition to those 4 scenarios, you get some optional supplemental lessons that you can incorporate in there, and we'll talk a little bit more about them later. It's a start to finish on completing a return. Now, this first return is really simple. It's a single guy. He's got a W-2. He's real straightforward, right? So what they do is they give you the information from the intake interview. and they're suggesting that you role model the intake interview. The intake packet is not complete for these people. They're missing some information, the information's not clear, so they give you a little script in order to try and walk you through and role play the intake interview. And then it basically walks you through the whole return, and there's a whole bunch of PowerPoint slides, but you stop, you do some hands-on, you do more lecture, you do more hands-on, however it works for your area. Throw in a quiz or two, you know, that sort of thing. But they've got a good framework for you here. And the teaching points are really on the topics that are needed for that return. You're not going off and doing pension information as part of income when you're talking about the single guy, because he's got no pension, okay? So you're really focused on what's going on. The optional and supplemental lessons, I may not have this on a slide because I put it on my notes. ACA, so they give you information about ACA, self-employment, a broker's statement, so 1099-Rs, and capital gains and losses, okay? Now they're considering that supplemental, but we're actually making it required and part of the whole thing. So, you know, you adjust it the way you want to.
The idea was that you could kind of make this as simple for really new people and then extend them into the more complex topics for your returning folks. So they can be fairly simple, self-contained, easily done in one session kind of things. And then you can add on the more complex discussion questions, those kinds of things. I think the instructor guide is not in the one that's on the portal because the portal is available to everyone. The instructor guide is available on the instructor share.
No, it's in the...
Is it on the portal now?
Yeah, I believe it's part of the package when you download the cases.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
README file is part of
in their
that.
decisions.
I think so.
Okay.
Okay. So, you know, the question is, why do case-based training? Again, it builds. It takes the simple return. It runs from start to finish, and they've got hands-on practice. They can see exactly what they're going to be doing at a site, and each return gets a little bit more complex, reinforces what you saw in the previous return, and just builds as you go along. One of the things that's also the objective is to be able to, and I kind of hate this phrase, it's teach to the test, but the case-based training is designed with a goal in mind of passing the advanced tests. So you don't have to pull in all this extraneous stuff that we all know they may run into during their first year, but they don't need it to pass their tests. So it's trying to really keep things contained, because it's really easy to go off onto all that other stuff.
That should help with the overwhelmingness too.
Yeah.
But then how do they sit down and actually do a tax return if they've only learned some of the core high-end information?
Then you can, the idea is that you can add those things that are common to your district.
Right.
So for instance, we don't see any Indian income, but they see a lot of it. You see a lot of it. So that would be something you, for Oregon, you might want to add in, right? Or if you see a lot of a particular topic, you can add that in to it, but without adding everything that goes with it.
And you know, for example, you know, if you were teaching a topic and you were doing income, the income topics could just be huge, and some of it really not appear on any of the tests, and that's the overwhelming part. So you've got to prepare them for your area as well as passing the tests. So it's a fine balance.
See, I think that philosophy to me is kind of weird, that you're training them to pass a test, not training them to do tax returns.
Well,
you're doing both.
Do the same. Yeah,
You're doing both.
I'll give you my scenario I used. When we all learned to drive a car, you weren't taught how to change a tire. You weren't taught how to drive in the snow unless you were from the East Coast. You were taught basic things. It's the same thing. What you need to do is recognize when you hear a different sound, a different vibration when you're driving that car, so you can let your parents know you forgot to put oil in it, you know?
Yeah. So it's not just the test. They really weren't designed just to test. They were designed to teach the core advanced topics. The core advanced topics rather than the comprehensive advanced topics, which include all of the little nuances that could ever be done. So core advanced topics, which is what the majority of what we see. So it's really not just teaching to the test. It
No,
is to the core, to the advanced exam. It covers all the advanced exam topics. But the idea was to teach the core subjects that are part of that, because that's the majority of what we see.
Because if you keep in mind, one of the goals of at least your new people, is to get them certified. And if the material that you're teaching doesn't support them and have them successful in passing the advanced test, then we haven't done our jobs. Yeah.
I think the other thing is it is potentially good for is helping to reinforce process. So much of what we do is process-based, actually doing the returns and how to identify the squeaky, odd noise in the car, and that operating that process is really what makes the program a success.
So the recommendation on the case basis is to take each case right from the intake interview all the way through finishing up the return before you go on to the next case. So you get that intake interview procedure, you familiarize the new people. For instance, you're going to have to talk to the taxpayers, and this is how it's going to happen. And you're going to do that at least 4 times because they're going to see it if you use all 4 returns. So the repetition and the expectation of what you expect them to do and what they now see what's going to be done at the site in preparing a return. It's realistic. If you're just teaching topics and you're doing practice labs, it doesn't necessarily prepare them for what is actually done at a site.
I don't know, if, and maybe you guys are different than us, but I don't know. But it seems like there's some stress when you have somebody sitting in office when you actually do somebody's task. It seems to evoke some stress on them. And folks that do well in the training and that will do well, like kind of freeze up.
Right.
And it happens kind of like at the start of our tax season, and like for a couple of days, I'll just walk around and help people because you'll be getting people like, oh, I got stuck, and it's like a railroad retirement. Which we've studied, they've done, they just get kind of freeze up. So you walk over, you walk them through it, and they're good. And then the next person, they know how to do it, but there is a stress level that not everybody, and so that's the difference between the test and we got to. I think they're the same. Like we teach them both,
right.
And then part of the training is when we start doing it, we just need to coach them.
And I'm always adamant about telling people, I said, you know, we're doing training here and you're learning how to do this and you're going to pass the test. But you are going to have, I call it on the site training. That first year, you are going to learn so much from the people at the site because you're going to ask questions, because you're going to know. I want you to learn enough to recognize that, oh, I think I need to do something with this form, but I don't remember what. Let me ask. And if that's all you can do, you are ahead of the game because I want you to recognize that you need to ask a question and be comfortable with asking that question. I am of the I came up through technology. Technology is my background, software, that sort of stuff. I had to learn lots of programming languages and things like that. And I never memorized all this stuff. I got really good at knowing I need to look something up and where to look it up and how to look it up. And that's the only way I could manage the vast amount of knowledge that I needed to do in my job. And so I really appreciate that. But then when you ask me a question, I may be the one that says, ooh, I don't know, I'm going to have to get back to you on that. But I think I know where to look for that, right? So I just really encourage the new people is that you're going to learn a lot at the site preparing the returns. And we have some sites, somebody earlier had said they set new people next to mentors, and they watch and they switch places and they do returns until they're comfortable, that sort of thing. And we do that too. We have some sites that do that. So there's a lot of different ways to help the new people through. But we don't want to overwhelm them during training. My stats that I'm getting from the district coordinators is that we lose like 50% of our people that go through new training. They don't even take the test. And so I said, well, how many drop out because they didn't pass the test? And we don't have that stat because we don't ask. And so we're ending up with like a third, 25% or 30%. And you know, we need to work at retention. And so one of our goals of switching to this case base is hopefully we're going to have more retention of the new people. So that's my spiel. Okay, so I'm going to give you the examples, real brief overviews of what the cases look like. So Andrew is the single working taxpayer, and we're going to do the intake and the interview. He's got a single filing status as a single person would. But this is all he's got for income. So, oh, well, he's got interest. Maybe that's French, I don't know. PowerPoint doesn't do as good a job as spell check. So we're really focused. We're only going to focus on those income topics while we're talking about his return. Adjustments, we're only going to talk about 2 adjustments on his return. He's going to take standard deduction because he doesn't have anything. We're going to have to explain to him, well, we're not going to have to explain to him because he didn't have any standard deduction. He didn't itemize the year before either. He's a single taxpayer, right? When we get to a more complex one, we're going to have to explain to them why they're not itemizing this year, and they're just going to take the standard. But we now introduce the retirement savings credit. You wouldn't think that on day 1, on the first return, you're going to introduce something like this. But a simple case, a simple return like this, probably has retirement savings if they're a good solid working person. So to the next one, you guys can see this, by the way. Baker is a single working parent, okay? So now we're addressing filing status because she's going to be a head of household. And that allows us now to start talking about dependents and what we can see in the volunteer resource book. We all like the trifold, so that's going to be our primary one. We're going to tell them that and show them where in the resource book that we can find that information. Again, information 2 different ways, but it gives us an opportunity to start talking about that. She's got some different incomes that are going on. Boy, your G is just not typing, right? Yeah. She's got some other adjustments, and she's got a child because she's had a household. So now we're going to be starting to introduce child tax credit, earned income, etc. Okay, and and almost all the cases have some additional supplemental practice things. Well, with this one, the additional practice is that she's got some 401k contributions, and it allows us to start talking about that. Okay, but you know she's got. I didn't list W-2. If she's got 401k contributions, she must have a W-2.
Yes, yeah, that's part of the additional practice. So you're going to get to do a W-2 again.
Right.
You're going to get to do retirement contributions again.
And we're going to throw in a little. Again. We're going to throw a little interest. So we're repeating things. When we come to Caldwell, Caldwell is a young married couple. Again, we get to review filing status, dependents. They've got a little bit different income though. And so we can now start introducing different incomes, different expenses, different credits, but we're building. Now, there's a supplemental additional practice, there's wages. I don't remember what that is right off the top of my head.
So they both have W-2s.
Do they? Okay, good. Now, there's a supplemental lesson on Caldwell that we're going to do, and this is where we're going to start introducing self-employment. Okay? So we kind of stop the return, and we say, and we've entered it, and we're looking at it, it's good, and they say, okay, well now we're going to add on some supplemental employment. And you know, we're going to be doing lectures PowerPoints, lectures. We're going to do handouts with the trifolds. We're going to enter things. We're going to throw in some NTTC quiz questions throughout. So we're going to try and make it as interactive as we can. I'm hoping this will be our first year, so I'm hoping we'll take some good notes as to what we can do different for next year, but it'll be interesting. So the last couple is senior ones. So now we get to talk about pensions and Social Security, and they also have some rent on land. And it's not, no, it's not a Schedule E. So they rent their land to a beekeeper, and a beekeeper pays them money. Yes. So, but they have some additional things that they're doing. They take an IRA distribution, so we're building on them again. Now, Davenport has supplemental lessons. They have a broker statement and a K1. So now we're going to be able to reinforce dividends and interest, because that's on their broker statements. And we're going to be looking at capital gains and losses. Okay, so keep in mind on each one of these, we'll be going through that intake and interview sheet so that we'll know what questions to ask. We'll be trying to match up documents to what's on the intake and interview, and just pretend it's a mini tax preparation session while we're trying to teach the tax law at the same time. Okay, so let's see where I am. Okay, how to get started. I mentioned the instructor's guide. The instructor guide looks like this. Let's do this. I'm just going to pull it up. It has an introduction, and it has the instructor guide instructions, and I'm just going to pull up Andrew's here a minute. Let's see, what else have I got? Let me do this. Okay, yeah, the appendix. We'll come back to that. Okay. Pull that up for Andrew. So basically, it tells you the topics that are going to be covered. There are some instructor notes here and some directions. They give you some options to instructors to conduct the interview in front of the class in a role play. We're going to do that. We have 2 people already volunteering to do that. And then they have the following issues that should be addressed during the intake and the interview. So that's all listed down there for you. And that brings in some really interesting things. In this one, for example, one of the options they say is you could introduce the identity theft issue and the IRS PIN number, that sort of thing. So they throw in some options for you. I think we're going to hold off on that one and do it later and talk about that later. Okay? And then as they, sorry about that, they give you information about entering the documents. And they give you topics that you could then use as talking points to point out, you know, well, how would the W-2 look if the taxpayer made a contribution to a 401k? What box, what code, that sort of thing. So they really give you a lot of what's out of scope on a 1099 INT. They give you a lot of information to be able to kind of drive your presentation and your discussions with. Okay? And I think that was it. But the supplemental lessons and everything are in here too. And then, oh, I kind of like this because it reminds you to, you know, when after you're done entering, you know, go to the summary print and review the 1099 discussions, and then here's some options. They have some options about ACA, because we didn't talk about ACA at all. Our plan is we are going to stop the return at ACA, and we're not going to talk about it until day 4. Day 4, we're going to present ACA. And the way it's being presented, our ACA expert, subject matter expert, first thing he's going to talk about is MEC, minimum essential coverage.
Oh.
I didn't get that. Okay? And in doing that, he's going to, I can't remember which case, he's going to draw us back into that case. He's going to talk about it, draw us back into that case, and then we're going to finish that return for that person that has it's the seniors, because they have Social Security and they have Medicare. They've met it. That's the basics, and we're going to finish that return in terms of ACA. Then he's going to talk about exemptions. Okay? Well, the very first case, Andrews, he's got 2 months, no coverage, he's got an exemption, he's got a short gap. Once we go through all the exemptions and explain about that, we're going to go back into Andrews and we're going to finish up his ACA with the exemptions, etc. And so there's a SRP, we'll go back and finish one because somebody's got a SRP and somebody's got a PTC, and so we'll go back in and finish that. So we're stopping our returns and then holding off on some of the other subjects.
So how much time are you going to give to the affordability exemption in AC? That is very difficult calculation to get to.
It is. And for our new people, we don't spend a lot of time on it. But what we do tell them is that we introduce them to the calculator, we introduce them to the concepts, and that if affordability comes up, then somebody will sit with you at the site and work through the calculator and show you how to do this. It's not, if you had to teach that, it's so overwhelming. So, I mean, we did a whole 2-3 hours just on the affordability calculator for returning people last year. They were overwhelmed. So we don't want to do that to the new ones. So that is one of those on-the-site training issues that we push off.
It's not just new counselors.
That's
we have
right.
counselors that just refuse to deal with AC.
Right, no. So last year, part of our returning, one of the reasons we did returning is to focus on some of these new calculators. Well, they were new, a couple of years ago. And so we picked several. Education, ACA, pension, and something else that had to do with Oregon, because we were focusing on Oregon last year too. Yeah, that's probably it. And that's what we taught to the returning ones, and they loved it. That was great, because that was the gap. They were fine on the federal stuff for the most part, but that was their gap there. So, yeah, we did that. But anyway, that's the instructor's guide. I found it really, really helpful.
You will not find answers anywhere for these 4 problems.
No, you won't. So you have to figure it out yourself. Yeah.
We'll try and pool our answers together and put up a sheet.
So you're showing us an instructor guide thing. Where do you get that thing? Where do you get it?
I believe it was in part of the package in the library that I downloaded.
It's
in the
also
portal
on the
library.
instructor share.
Okay.
It's on the instructor share. It's on my link.
Okay.
Look at my emails. If you don't have it, let me know. I'll send it to you again.
Do you have the cases on the instructor
The cases
share?
are up there as well.
Okay, good. So
The
then you don't
whole
have to
package is
download
up there,
it.
and the instructor guide is out separately by
Okay,
itself as well.
good. Do you have the README?
I have the package up there.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, because the README actually gives their philosophy on how they expect you to kind of utilize this. And, they say right up front, modify these slides, make them work for your sites, your areas, what you have to do. So, yeah.
Also, one of the returns, you have the residential energy credit.
Yeah.
No, part of it.
I can't remember which.
I think Miller is it Miller's? One of the proficiency returns has an energy credit on it. But read very carefully, because they purchased it in 2017. It simply wasn't installed until 2018. And so they, because it was purchased in 2017, they can take it.
Yeah, but there is one on here, Davenport, the senior married couple. Yeah, there is a residential energy credit, and honestly, I don't remember.
They can take it to Oregon for that situation.
If they have a card, they can take it for Oregon, yeah. So it may not go into their federal, yeah. Unless you We'll give you special instruction. Yeah, there may be an extender as well, and that's maybe part of the law. We just don't know.
So while I'm here in the instructor guide, I may have another slide or something on it, but let me just cover this right now. What they've got is a sample training schedule for new volunteers. Okay? And I looked at this and I thought, okay, they're 5 days. Okay? And they're giving time estimates, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. There's some notes down on the page, and I'm going, okay. And then I kept reading on down the page, and there really is some prerequisites. There's some assumptions that you've already covered, a whole bunch of stuff before you even get into here. And I'm thinking, oh my God, we only have 5 days, so I have to do their 5 days plus everything else. And so I got this outline for the detailed agenda, the session, the start time, who, materials, everything from last year's IWS presentation. And I took that to heart. And John will know, I have 5 pages, and almost every page, I don't have the objectives, almost every page is full. It's a spreadsheet of line items of what we're doing when, what handouts are being used, what PowerPoints are being displayed, who's going to do it, and it is a fine-tuning of time. And what I did though is I took the single taxpayer. It says 2.5 hours. I have no idea whether it's going to take 2.5 hours. I can't practice this stuff, right? I plugged in 2.5 hours. So all 4 cases and their supplementals, I took their time estimates off of here and I plugged those in. Everything else grew around those. Okay? I gotta think that they're giving me enough time, but I don't know. So we'll know after this year whether or not our time is right. But we have to be able to be flexible. And we've got like 6 hours, 6.5 hours generally, if you exclude lunch there too.
So one of the things that we did was we moved the practice-focused exercise to homework.
Yes. So on my schedule, I've got this practice-focused exercise, and it has 0 minutes on my time schedule. Because if you were like John, who was first year last year, and he was bored with us talking, he could be working on that. Or you could take it home, you know, and so there was lots of options. So I've got 0 minutes allocated to those, but I have them in the schedule so that we know there's opportunities there. Okay? So be aware that there's a whole bunch of prerequisites if you're teaching new ones that they expect you've already done, and we have to cram it all into our 5 days.
It's a guideline. It's a guideline.
It is a guideline.
Look at them. Figure out whether or not that makes sense for you. We don't do whole days. We do half days. So we had to kind of jury rig and Jimmy and, you know, we'll move that supplemental lesson to this day because we couldn't fit it all in our time.
And then there's some more interview notes for each of the cases. Okay, so this is a really helpful document, and it is a guideline. You have to modify it. Okay.
So you said you're going to do the role play the first day.
We're going to do it for each return.
We're going to do a role play for each one of them.
Each return.
Okay.
So, and we are we're going to get a lot of the. I didn't bring it with me. We're going to do a lot of the, objectives and the overviews and the introductions, and we're going to hit scope very high level because we're going to hit scope a couple of times through the week, trying to build on that, make it more complex as we go along. We're going to hit a little policy thing. We're going to give them a little intro to what's expected in terms of testing and stuff like that. But by about 2 hours in, less than that, we're going to jump into the first case. And we're going to do the role playing for the intake and interview. And before lunch and after lunch, we're going to do that first case. And so day 1, we're introducing them to the entire process. Now, what we talked about early in terms of, expectations and tests and stuff like that, we're going to hit those again later in the week. We're going to remind them, we're going to reinforce it, we're going to add on to the, the information that they need, and we're going to, again, wrap it up again on the 5th day and make sure that they understand certifications, expectations, that sort of thing. So we're doing it a little bit different. Instead of just giving it to them once, we're going to try and give it a little bit and add it a little more, reinforce it and add a little bit more, which is what the cases are doing. So by the end of day 3, we'll have gone through, by the morning of day 4, we'll have gone through all the cases and all the supplemental lessons for the cases. Then we follow on with ACA, we follow on with education benefits, we follow on with Oregon. Those are our topics. Day 5 is Oregon and education benefits. We do ACA the afternoon of day 4. That's kind of how we're organized. And also we accommodate some people's schedules too. If they're not going to, if we have a special presenter for the education benefits and she needs to do it at a certain time, so we just work that in.
So on those role plays, I think one of the things that we will do is for one of them, we'll give the instructor answers to one of the persons at a table and let the table ask that person for how to fill out their thing. So they'll get a little more intimate discussion about how to ask those questions. That's another approach for doing those interviews in this case-based approach. So role play is a great way to do it, small discussions, or just having them ask the instructor. The downside of having them just ask, the whole group ask the instructor is that your quieter, newer folks may not ask the questions because they're not sure what questions to ask. And so that's why we thought the idea of smaller things might give them an opportunity to learn what good questions look like.
I think what I'm going to do too is coach the 2 people who are going to do the role playing, that depending on how the first one goes and what kind of questions get asked and stuff like that, on the second one, hold back providing the information and ask the students, what do they see on the intake interview that maybe we should ask? Okay, so, you've gotten, this is how you do it, this is what you look for. Here's a new, case 2. Now, what is it do you think we need to ask? And then they can answer and respond as opposed to doing the 100% role playing. And so I'm hoping that what we'll do is slowly shift all of those so that we're being much more interactive with role playing. So, okay, so we talked about modifying for your district, modify. Topics that are pertinent to your district. We don't see a lot of Indian revenue, so we don't teach it to new people. And then we talked about the sample agenda and the time estimates. Modify it for the resources. We're modifying for resources available too. If you don't have people to come in and teach and help, you got to figure out how to do it with the resources you've got. Okay, how to make the transitions. Okay, we talked about this. I showed you kind of the appendixes and the prerequisites. I knew I was getting out of there. So what I really wanted to do was take just a few minutes here and have at your tables kind of brainstorm what kind of skill sets and resources you're going to need in order to modify the PowerPoints. Do you have people that are competent in PowerPoint and can make these modifications? And I put that out there because those NTT slide sets are not perfect. So my plan is that I am going to generate a PDF of the notes page view. So that would have the slide and then the notes. But it would be in a PDF. I'm going to put it out on the website for just Eugene. And so if you want to review what we talked about in class in the presentation, we'd have that. Well, I don't think anybody in NTTC switches in PowerPoint to notes page view. Because if they did, they would see that doesn't work. Yeah. the sizing and everything is all off. John was just valuable in order to figure out how to get things to
Just try on there.
display better, exactly.
Yeah.
So don't assume that the slides are, they're wonky as far as
They
I'm
have a
concerned.
lot of different people working on the slides, and
Right.
some of them have more skills than others.
And some of them, the embedding, you know, the bullets, and so the nesting of the bullets looks really good, and others, it doesn't work so good. So you need to have some PowerPoint skills in your district.
It
So
seems too that NTTC has not been able to entirely break off their love affair with PowerPoint. And there are a lot of PowerPoint still, even in the case-based
Yes.
method. And so, yeah, feel free to winnow those down. There's a lot of repetition. There's some that we talked about earlier that you can take a slide and make it notes for a previous slide, so you're not
we hide a lot of slides.
Yeah, hide
What,
slides.
we don't delete the slide, we hide it. And so it's there, it's visible, we can utilize it, it just doesn't show up on the
Right.
presentation. So the other question to ask your group is, you know, do you have the time to make the change? This year? Next year? Depending on when your training is and what resources you've got. Yeah, and what are some of the challenges in your district and the resources needed? So what I just thought is that maybe at your tables you could just kind of brainstorm some of these issues about what it would take to make the transition.
We talk a lot about PowerPoint, and Ruth, you do some Google stuff. Do you use Google Slides? Or you
I do not use Google Slides. We
stay with PowerPoint?
We stay with PowerPoint on the local machine, mostly because the internet in our site is okay, but it can be easily overwhelmed. And so that having to use the bandwidth for the Google Slides is just, I've never trusted it.
So, can we just do that for a few minutes and come up with some ideas?